Do you miss your avoidant ex? Then watch this. Do you miss your avoidant ex, or do you miss the version of yourself that existed when you were trying to win their love? That question alone is uncomfortable because most people assume longing means love. But longing isn't love. Longing is unfinished emotional business. It's the nervous system craving resolution. And when your ex was avoidant, resolution almost never came. What you're feeling right now isn't weakness, it's conditioning. Your body got used to chasing emotional breadcrumbs, interpreting silence as mystery, distance as depth, and inconsistency as chemistry. So when they disappear, your mind fills in the blanks with fantasy. You don't miss them as they were. You miss what you hoped they would finally become. Here's the brutal truth most people don't want to hear. Avoidant relationships don't end cleanly. They end psychologically unfinished. There was no real closure, no emotional landing, no moment where everything made sense. Instead, the relationship trained your nervous system to stay alert, hyper-focused, constantly scanning for signs of connection. That's why you replay conversations. That's why silence feels louder than words. That's why peace now feels strangely empty. You weren't bonded through safety. You were bonded through unpredictability. And the human brain confuses unpredictability with importance. If you're honest, the relationship probably followed a familiar rhythm. In the beginning, they were present, curious, maybe even intense. You felt chosen. Then slowly, or suddenly, the emotional temperature dropped. They pulled back, became vague, less available. And instead of leaving, you leaned in. You tried harder, explained more, gave more. Because part of you believed that if you could just say the right thing, be calm enough, patient enough, understanding enough, they would come back fully. That belief is what hooked you, not love, hope. Avoidants don't usually leave because they stop feeling. They leave because feeling too much activates their fear. Intimacy doesn't calm their nervous system. It threatens it. So when things deepen, they detach. And here's the mind-twisting part. When you stayed calm, consistent, emotionally open, you unknowingly became the trigger. Your stability highlighted what they couldn't provide. Your presence exposed their avoidance. And instead of rising to meet you, they retreated to protect themselves. So when you miss them, ask yourself this. Do you miss who they were? Or do you miss the emotional chase that kept you focused on them instead of yourself? Because missing an avoidant ex is rarely about connection. It's about withdrawal. Your nervous system got used to emotional highs and lows. When that stimulus disappears, your brain panics. It labels the absence as loss, even if the relationship was quietly draining you. Notice how the longing hits hardest in moments of stillness. Late at night, quiet mornings, when you're not distracted. That's not love resurfacing. That's your mind trying to fill a void that was already there during the relationship. The difference is, back then, the void was masked by anticipation. Now there's nothing to chase, and that silence forces you to confront something deeper. The part of you that learned to equate effort with worth. Avoidant dynamics subtly train you to abandon yourself. You stop expressing needs clearly. You overregulate your emotions so you don't scare them away. You become hyper-aware of their moods. And the most dangerous shift happens quietly. You start believing that love is something you must earn through restraint. So when the relationship ends, you don't just lose them. You lose the version of yourself that was constantly trying to be chosen. That's why missing them feels so personal. It feels like rejection all over again. But here's what no one tells you. The ache you feel is not evidence that they were your person. It's evidence that the bond was imbalanced. Healthy love doesn't leave you addicted to someone's absence. Secure connection doesn't create emotional withdrawal symptoms. Calm doesn't feel empty when you've never been deprived of it. And here's the quiet irony. Avoidants often feel the loss later, not sooner. While you're grieving, reflecting, trying to understand, they're distracting themselves, staying busy, numbing. But emotional suppression has a delayed cost. Eventually, when the noise fades, when they encounter someone emotionally present again, your absence becomes loud. Not because you chased, not because you proved your worth, but because you stopped regulating their emotions for them. If you're in no contact right now, understand this. Silence is doing more than words ever could. Avoidants are wired to feel safest when there's distance. So when you don't pursue, don't explain, don't react, you disrupt their internal script. They expected you to chase, to demand answers, to prove attachment. When you don't, the power quietly shifts. Not in a manipulative way, but in a psychological one. You become unresolved, and unresolved experiences linger. But this isn't about getting them back. That's where most people get stuck. The real question is, why do you want someone who could only love you from a distance? Why does part of you equate emotional unavailability with depth? That pattern didn't start with them. They simply activated it. And until you understand that, the longing will keep returning, even if they do. Missing an avoidant ex is often the final lesson they leave behind. It forces you to confront your attachment wounds, your tolerance for emotional ambiguity, your fear of walking away without answers, and if you resist that lesson, you'll repeat it with someone else wearing a different face. So if you miss them today, don't shame yourself. Missing doesn't mean going back. It means your system is recalibrating. You're detoxing from inconsistency. You're learning what peace actually feels like, without adrenaline, without guessing games, without emotional absence disguised as mystery. And here's the reframe that changes everything. The moment you stop romanticizing the distance, the longing loses its grip. When you remember not just how intensely you felt, but how often you felt unseen, confused, emotionally alone, the fantasy collapses. You don't miss them. You miss the idea of being chosen by someone who never fully chose you. The most powerful shift happens quietly. One day you'll realize you haven't checked their social media. You haven't replayed the last conversation. You haven't imagined what you'd say if they came back. Not because you hardened, but because your nervous system finally learned that love doesn't require self-betrayal. And if they ever do come back, they won't recognize you. Not because you changed into someone colder, but because you stopped trying to be understood by someone who avoided understanding themselves. If you're missing your avoidant ex right now, don't rush to erase the feeling. Let it teach you. Longing doesn't mean you should go back. It means you're finally seeing the truth without distraction. What you lost wasn't love. It was uncertainty dressed as connection. And what you're gaining now is something far more rare, emotional clarity. If this message resonated, stay with yourself instead of chasing closure from someone who couldn't offer it. Real peace doesn't beg to be chosen. It arrives when you finally choose yourself.